gut health, hormone health, skin health, nervous system health, all huge topics in the health and wellness industry, sure. But what if there was a thread that tied them all together? And what if that thread was something that wasn't really talked about much and wasn't really taught much in our society? And what if that thread that we don't really talk about or teach much happened to be one of the most important systems in our body? Today, guys, we're talking about our lymphatic system, and we're talking about why it is so incredibly important to understand how your lymphatic system works and how you can support it. Because learning about your lymphatic system can change everything about how you approach your health and wellness. If your lymphatic system is working well, you're probably not going to have any issues. But if it's not working well, our hormones suffer, our immune system struggles, brain fog can get worse. Things like swelling, skin issues, and other physical conditions can flare. And even mental health issues like brain fog, all the way to anxiety and depression, can actually get worse. And there's research behind this. Let's get to it. Hey, you guys, I'm Savanna, and welcome back to my channel. I'm a multidisciplinary mind-body practitioner, and I've got over 15 years of experience in integrating yoga, body work, and mental health principles across the physical, the energetic, the mental, and the spiritual. I've used ancient traditional wisdom with modern scientific approaches to help people like you better learn how to take care of themselves from a truly holistic and mind-body perspective. And if the physical, the energetic, the mental, and the spiritual sounds interesting to you, those actually happen to be the 4 layers of my model called the Mind-Body Roadmap. And if you'd like to know more about me or the Mind-Body Roadmap, I've got a link down below in the description where you can learn more and join the interest list to be one of the first people to know when the Mind-Body Roadmap guidebook goes live later this year. Enough about me, though, you guys. Let's get to the lymphatic basics. So before we delve in, I really like to give everyone a visual of what exactly it is that we're talking about here. So our lymphatic system runs all over our body. Those little tubes, those little green lines are lymphatic vessels. Just like how our blood has blood vessels, our lymphatic system has lymphatic vessels. And then those little clusters are lymph nodes, right? We'll get into more of those in a little bit. But it's really important to notice that there's not a heart. There's not a big pump. There's not something central that tells our lymphatic system what to do. We're going to get more to that in a little bit, but that's, like I said, really important to start with here. But first and foremost, our lymphatic health is essential to optimal health and wellness, but somehow and for some reason gets left completely out of the conversation. And the reason that it is so essential to optimal health and wellness, first and foremost, is that it is our trash pickup system. Every cell, every system, everything else in our body relies on our lymphatic system to deal with the trash that they produce. So our skin, our gut, our hormones, our nervous system, right? There are specific implications for some of those that we'll get to here in a little bit. But first and foremost, all of those systems are making waste and they all need nutrients, right? And our lymphatic system is what really helps that flow smoothly. When it doesn't flow smoothly, though, and things get interesting. So when we are doing things to help our lymphatic system and we're doing things to help support it, our goal is to move lymphatic fluid called lymph that is stagnant and sluggish so that we can make space for the good nutrients to get in, right? We want to clear the yucky stuff out, clear the trash out, clear the junk out so that the good stuff can get in, like oxygen, nutrients, fresh fluid. It's like this river, right? Do you want a dried up creek bed that's muddy and gross and just sluggish? Or do you want a robust flowing river to really be able to transport things well? I don't know about you, but I would prefer that, right? Now, a little thought experiment here, especially when we're thinking about our lymphatic system being like the trash pickup. I don't know about you, but I don't do super well when our trash doesn't get picked up. We had some ice recently. I think we had like 2 weeks of trash built up. You guys, everybody on my street, we all had extra bags out by our trash can, right? But especially even think about in the house. If there's trash laying around, are you going to feel your best? Are you going to be able to get the things done that you want to get done in the day? Or are you going to be trying to deal with trash that maybe smells weird? Oh, it's just gross, right? Things don't feel great. And especially even with our neighborhood, right? A couple of weeks of missing the trash pickup, it was noticeable. But what happens if we're thinking about the trash not coming for a month or 6 months or even a couple of years, right? Like, I don't know many people that would do well, many cities that would do well, many neighborhoods that would do well in those types of environments. We need our trash pickup to come, and we need it to come fairly regularly. And our body's the same way, right? So especially if we're thinking about a couple of weeks of maybe things getting built up, but what happens if it's longer than that? And what happens if it's in really populated areas where there's a lot of trash being produced, right? I don't want to walk past that. I sure don't want to live in that, right? Why are we making ourselves live in that? Interesting thing to think about. And like we said, it is so important for so many things, but our lymphatic system has a ton of different jobs. Our body's ability to detox, our body's ability to fight infections, our body's ability to maintain balance and well-being, all are reliant on our lymphatic system. And even hormone balance and fluid balance too. There's just a lot that goes into it. And like I said, we're going to get into that more in depth here in a little bit. But very specifically, our lymphatic system manages detox and waste removal. Remember, we talked about the trash pickup, right? So can we get the trash away? And can we get the yucky stuff out that we want to get out? That's really important. It also manages our immune function. It is how we mitigate and fight infections. And if you notice, a swollen lymph node is a sign of a lot of things. First line of defense, first sign of, hey, you need to go talk to your doctor. There can be a lot of reasons for that, but especially if your lymph nodes are swollen, we want to make sure there's not infection. We want to make sure there's not something that your body is trying to fight off. Our lymph nodes and our lymphatic system is the first thing that handles that. Fluid balance, especially with edema, lymphedema, lipedema, even conditions like POTS that are very reliant on orthostatic issues as well, that aren't related specifically to POTS. They're very, very dependent on our body having a well-regulated balance of fluid in our body. And our lymphatic system is what first and foremost handles our fluid balance in our body. Yes, hormones play in. Yes, we have excretion. Yes, we can drink in and take in more water, but our lymphatic system really, really regulates the fluid. Nutrient transportation, right? Getting that good stuff in. This is also a very fundamental yoga therapy principle. If you want to see me wear more than one of my hats, clearing the yucky stuff out, clearing the waste out, the trash out, the dukkha, to make way for the sukha, the good stuff. Right? Nutrient transportation. Can we get the nutrients to our cells, oxygen to our cells, the good stuff to our cells? That is so important. Our lymphatic system also plays key roles in regulating inflammation, again, from the hormone perspective and the physical perspective. And it also is incredibly important for mitigating the stress response. So we're going to get into this in a little bit, but when we are stressed, anxious, when we are experiencing traumatic situations, that impacts our lymphatic flow. And then the sluggish lymphatic flow turns around and can exacerbate all of the hormones, the mental side effects of stress, anxiety, trauma, things like that, on the physical, the energetic, the mental, and even the spiritual too. So it becomes this sort of vicious cycle. And supporting our lymphatic health is just one way that we can try to break that cycle and intervene and hopefully get folks better results quicker. But we'll get to that more here in a little bit. And again, if our lymphatic system cannot take the trash out, our hormones, our nervous system, including our vagus nerve, our skin, our digestive system, and our ability to fight infection will all be compromised. And now this is a quote directly from Rudolph Ballantyne and one of my favorite books, Radical Healing. Rudolph Ballantyne is a medical doctor, and he became quote this correctly, became the president of the Himalayan Institute. The Himalayan Institute is where my yoga therapy lineage is through. And one of the things that Rudolph Ballantyne talks about in Radical Healing is the fact that most people will talk about elimination, like, oh, you've got to make sure you're pooping and you're peeing so you can detox everything. That's great. Make sure you're sweating, make sure you're breathing things out. But directly from Rudolph Ballantyne, bolstering those big four normal elimination routes, like our colon, our urinary tract, our skin, and our lungs, is of limited value unless we also tend to the internal systems that package and bring the waste to them. I'm going to say that again. Bolstering the big four normal elimination routes, including pooping, peeing, sweating, and breathing, is of limited value unless we also tend to the internal systems that package and bring the waste to them. This is the liver, the kidneys, and our lymphatic system. Especially if you've seen my Science of the Woo videos, you know how I feel about the liver and kidneys. I love talking about the liver and the kidneys and the lymphatic system as well too. But to go on with Rudolph Valentine, initiating a large-scale clean-out when these organs can't handle the extra burden will not work. Taking care of your liver is a requirement. Taking care of your kidneys is a requirement. But taking care of your lymphatic system is how the waste gets there in the first place. It is arguably the most important, in my opinion. And in general, with consistent lymphatic support, we expect to see decreases in edema, swelling of all kinds. We expect to see decreases in systemic inflammation. We expect to see decreases in pain levels. We also expect to see decreases in infection rates and recovery times, both pre and post surgery. We also expect to see increases in range of motion, that's ROM. So can your joint literally move in a greater range of motion than it could before? We expect to see improvements in sleep, in relaxation, in mental clarity, and in overall well-being. Wait, so Savanna, we're talking about lymphatic system and lymph and vessels and lymph nodes. Like, what are all those things, right? Let's talk about it. So our lymph, or our lymphatic fluid, it's clear. It's very watery. It's got almost no color to it, except for deep in your abdomen, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But it's clear and pretty watery, and it is derived from the fluid that exists between your cells. It's called extracellular fluid. Not that you need to know this. It's just kind of an interesting fun fact, though, that it is, in fact, a connective tissue. Lymph is a connective tissue, just like blood is a connective tissue. And that lymph generally contains cellular waste, cellular debris, toxins, pathogens like viruses and bacteria. And we generally make about 3 liters of lymph a day. So think about a 2 liter of soda, about 1.5 of those is about how much lymph we make in a day. And like we talked about earlier, there's not a heart to pump our lymph around like our heart pumps our blood around. So lymph moves really slowly and fairly sporadically. Just like this, yeah. So there's not a heart to pump it around. And what's interesting, though, is that our blood, like we talked about earlier, flows around in a circle, right? So that blue means something, the red means something, and it means something in our capillary beds, too. This is a capillary bed down here. And what happens is our blood is constantly being pumped around. Our lymphatic vessels, though, we have tiny little lymphatic vessels that start and kind of weave around in those capillary beds. And that's where the trash pickup really, really starts. And that trash pickup starts to pull things out, and it pulls the fluid along our lymphatic vessels towards our lymph nodes. And like we talked about earlier in that graphic, kind of the clusters and the darker areas, those are the lymph nodes. Here's a few closer up. So this is your armpit. There's a cluster of nodes in your armpit. There's clusters, they're called chains. There's a chain in your armpits. There's a chain in your neck. There's chains in your groin and in your hip. There's chains behind your knees and in your elbows. And there are a lot of there's a lot of lymphatic tissue in your abdomen as well, too. I think it's actually interesting, too, how many lymph nodes there are. So there's like 600 or 700 of them. And each and every one of those lymph nodes is a little filter. It literally just filters the lymph, and it's taking care of anything that lymph is bringing to it, filtering it out, filtering it out, filtering it out. We love that. But the most important piece of your lymphatic system is actually your terminus and your termini points. And now those terminus points, literally termini, plural of terminus like terminate, right? We have a terminus on our right side, and we have a terminus on our left side. And that is literally where your lymphatic system stops. And your lymphatic system takes all of that lymph and says, hey, blood, hey, heart, a cardiovascular system, get this where it needs to go. So your blood takes care of it from there, and then it can get excreted out through any of those other pathways. But it has to get to that terminus first, right? When we're thinking about how things flow, our right terminus takes care of our right arm and our head and neck. Our left terminus pretty much takes care of everything else. And this is, again, this is my graphic, but you've got kind of clusters in your head and your neck. You've got clusters in your armpits, in your deep abdomen. You've got them in your hip. You've got them behind your knees and behind your elbows, or inside of your elbows. And there are other lymphatic tissues. Some interesting ones that folks tend to know about are tonsils, right? So in the back of our throat, it's our body's first line of defense for a lot of different pathogens. You've got our thymus. Let's see, our thymus is kind of in behind our chest. Excuse me, that matures a very specific type of white blood cell that helps fight infections. We've got bone marrow, which is not in this graphic, but it is part of our lymphatic system. We've also got several different types of abdominal tissue. We've got lacteals, we've got Peyer's patches, and we've got our appendix. The lacteals and the Peyer's patches, those sort of tissues are really important in how our body is able to absorb nutrients, but very specifically fatty acids and lipids. And the reason that that is so important is because most of our hormones and most of our reproductive hormones and a lot of our hormones are synthesized from fatty acids. So fatty acids are turned into cholesterol. And for our reproductive hormones specifically, cholesterol gets turned into something called pregnenolone. Pregnenolone then either gets derived into testosterone, estrogen, things like that. That's its whole pathway. Or there's a progesterone and cortisol pathway, which is very fascinating to think about and going to be in its own deep dive video, but that's not the topic of this video. Stay on task, Savanna. Let's see, the other one here very specifically. So actually I did mention our appendix. For a long time, folks thought the appendix didn't do anything, but it actually plays an interesting role in our gut health with our gut flora specifically. It helps get rid of bad bacteria and also helps repopulate good bacteria. So remember when we started, hormones, gut, skin, things like that, that wasn't just a hook. I meant it. All of this stuff is related, right? The most interesting piece, though, before we move on, is the spleen. It's over on the left side of our abdomen. And our spleen is one of the largest internal organs we have. I think it actually might be the largest internal organ we have. And it's responsible for filtering our blood. What I find to be the most fascinating is that traditional Chinese medicine was able to correctly identify that the spleen was a very important factor in an entire cluster of issues that overlaps very strongly with what we know of to be indicative of lymphatic issues now too. So Chinese medicine for thousands of years would look at something called spleen qi deficiency. And spleen deficiency has a lot of things in common with lymphatic system issues and lymphatic system stagnation. We will get into that more here in a little bit, trying not to overwhelm you with everything all at once. I really do find a lot of this stuff super interesting and fascinating. I really love geeking out on this. I'm glad that you're coming along for the ride, right? Now, I'm also going to throw a word at you that you may not have heard of before, which is glymphatic. And there's lymphatic, which is how our trash gets taken out from our whole body. There is also the glymphatic system, and that is how the trash gets taken out from our brain and from our central nervous system. So the brain has literally its own lymphatic system. Is that important, you guys? It has its own trash pickup. And it was only discovered in 2015, literally 2015. And it is still widely misunderstood. We don't know a ton about it, but we do know a couple of things that can be really, really specifically helpful for those of us who are wanting to improve our overall health and wellness. One thing specifically is that researchers in China have actually had really great success in initial studies and initial trials with reducing Alzheimer's disease and improving outcomes in Alzheimer's patients by using surgical procedures to improve glymphatic and lymphatic flow to the brain, both the external lymphatic flow and the internal lymphatic flow too. Literally improving folks with Alzheimer's disease fairly rapidly. It's a fascinating thing to look up. And I'll make sure that there is a link down to that research below. The procedure was called lymphatic venous anastomosis, and it was done in China. Like I said, I think in 2024, 2025 was when that was done. Fairly recent. As well as there was a study that just came out in February 2026 about how morning sunlight can improve glymphatic function and reduce subclinical depression. So we've got neurodegenerative issues being treated with and treated fairly successfully by improving lymphatic and glymphatic flow. And now we also have mental health, mood issues being improved by improving our glymphatic health and our glymphatic flow. Super cool stuff. And literally 10 years of information behind it. And just like with our lymphatic system, how it clears the yucky stuff to bring the good stuff in, it takes the trash out of our brain, but it also makes sure that our brain can get things like glucose, lipids, amino acids, neurotransmitters, everything that our brain needs to function well. Our glymphatic system helps it do that. Really important to notice, though, that our glymphatic system can be suppressed, and there are several things specifically that can do that. Neurodegenerative disorders, so Alzheimer's and dementia, absolutely can suppress glymphatic function. Traumatic brain injuries can suppress glymphatic function. And if you've ever had a brain injury, you will know you can't hardly think for anything. Super foggy, it's not a fun time. Strokes can also suppress glymphatic function. Disrupted sleep can suppress our glymphatic function. So our glymphatic system is actually really active at night while we sleep. We don't have much glymphatic flow during the day. So if you're not getting a ton of sleep, it can absolutely impact the way our brain's able to take the trash out. It's not a good thing either. But chronic stress, which we're going to get to stress, anxiety, and trauma here in just a second. But again, good news is that there are things that we can do with that by improving lymphatic flow. We can also use some of the same principles to improve glymphatic flow too. And bright light, bright sunshine in the morning time, you guys literally researched to help with mental health issues. Love that so much, because fun fact, bright light in the morning is also super fantastic for hormone regulation, appetite regulation, as well as melatonin. So the sleepy chemical, we have so much light that we're exposed to during the day, all the times of day, especially on our devices, that our brain sometimes can't tell the difference between night and day. But if we get that really bright light first thing in the morning, it helps our body and our brains know, oh, okay, sunshine, it's time to wake up. Stop making the sleepy chemical. Let's get about our day, right? Okay, so Savanna, you told me about my lymphatic health. You told me about my glymphatic health. Why can't they just take care of themselves? I wish it was like that, but unfortunately it's not. Especially with the Western lifestyle, it is so important to help it along, because if you're not moving, your lymph isn't moving. Most people are not getting enough exercise during the day. I know I'm guilty of that as well. You've probably heard some noises in the background. I've got my baby with me. She's almost 5 months old. I know I'm not moving as much as I need to, which is why I support my lymphatic health, right? But because our lymphatic system does not have a pump, right? It doesn't have that heart, it doesn't have a pump. It has to have either muscles helping it along, it has to have pressure or compression, and we really have to think about the role of gravity in this. So the flow and the movement of lymph in the body is called lymphokinesis. Fun word if you want to look that up. But again, it doesn't have a pump. So we're either using muscles, pressure differences, compression, or gravity to try to get it to do something that it just really doesn't have the motivation to do, right? It's slow, it's sluggish, nothing's forcing it along. We have to help it along. How does stress, anxiety, and trauma impact our lymphatic system? This is really where we start to get in that overlap of hormones and nervous system and gut and things like that. I'm going to do my best to keep this short and simple, and I'm going to pay attention to my notes so that I don't get us off topic, because I can go with this for a very long time. And if you're interested in me delving more into this and delving into this more with me, the Nervous System 101 course, there's an interest list in my bio. Please go sign up for that. We're going to have a lot of fun with that course. But the gist of it right? So how it impacts our lymphatic system. When we're under stress, our sympathetic nervous system, so that gas pedal in our body, the thing that causes us to feel anxiety and panic and things like that, it tells our body that we need to either fight or run because there's a really big problem that we've got to deal with. Now, whether or not there's actually a really big problem there, it's not, that's not the topic of this video. Nervous system 101, we'll get into all of that. But when our sympathetic nervous system says, wee woo, there's a problem, hit the gas pedal, whether or not it really needs to, our nervous system tells our body to pump out stress hormones. Those stress hormones are cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. And you may have heard of epinephrine or norepinephrine too. Same. But the HPA axis tells our body to do that. And so we get this flood of stress hormones. And it's really interesting because our stress hormones have a lot of really specific impacts in our body that really, really mess with lymphatic function. So first and foremost, when we're in stress and in trauma, one of the first things that gets wonky is our breathing. You're going to talk about that more in depth later. And again, we will get into that a lot in the Nervous System 101 course. But when we don't have full access to full lymphatic breath, full diaphragmatic lymphatic breath, every single one of those lymph nodes, those lymphatic tissues in our abdomen, remember the ones that are responsible for helping us make hormones, all of those get compromised and all of the lymphatic flow to our abdomen gets reduced when we're not taking those deep internal, really rhythmic diaphragmatic breaths. Internal compressive forces we talked about earlier, that's one of the ways lymph moves. Rhythmic diaphragmatic breathing is the easiest way to do that and make that happen. And when we're stressed and when we're in trauma situations, rhythmic diaphragmatic breathing is one of the first things to go offline. Also, when we're in stress hormones, our blood vessels constrict, which when our blood vessels constrict, you know what else constricts? Our lymphatic vessels too. Love that. Excess cortisol also causes increased lymphatic congestion and slows the immune function of its own, like completely on its own. Love that too. Our glymphatic drainage capacity is inhibited when we're in chronic stress trauma physiology, and as well as the lymphatic function of the tissue around the brain. So the word is meninges. If you've heard of meningitis, it's the inflammation of that. Stress, anxiety, and trauma don't cause meningitis necessarily. It may, at least I don't know that it does. But stress, anxiety, and trauma physiology can absolutely impair the function of the meninges and that protective tissue around our brain. So not only your lymphatic system is messed up, your glymphatic system can get messed up, and then the thing that protects the glymphatic system as a whole, that gets messed up too. Love that. As well as increased neuroinflammation and just inflammation overall. Stress physiology is incredibly taxing on our body. And that is why nervous system regulation, lymphatic flow are some of my very specific niches that I love. Let's talk about some signs that your lymphatic system might need some help. We talked a lot about your lymphatic system overall, but hey, what are the wee woo red flags to know that you probably should be doing some form of lymphatic practice? Whatever you might choose, right? First and foremost, brain fogs and headaches. Remember we talked about lymphatic function, the meninges, all of that. You feel foggy in your head. If you're having headaches, migraines, absolutely a sign that your lymphatic system might need some help. If you feel heavy and sluggish in your body, that could be a good sign. Feeling sore and stiff in your body sometimes can go hand in hand with the heavy and sluggish, right? Having swollen, puffy hands and ankles, it's a sign that you absolutely have some fluid buildup happening. Fatigue, digestive issues, bloating, all signs that your lymphatic system needs some help, right? As well as the fun infection side of things. We've already talked about swollen lymph nodes. Chronic infections, absolutely a sign that your lymph nodes and your immune system are struggling. Chronic skin conditions, acne, dryness, and rashes. Exactly like what we talked about with Rudolph Valentine, how the skin is an elimination pathway. If our body can't get it out in other ways, it will look for ways and pathways out. Right. So if our body is struggling with our lymphatic system, with our kidneys, our liver, our digestive system, things like that, it's going to find a way for those things to move out and Skin conditions are a really convenient way for your lymphatic system, at least. Not for you, but for your well, for your body, I guess. Trash has got to come out some way. It's going to figure it out, right? A really important thing, though, is that if you are feeling worse after detox activities, especially things that are supposed to help, if you are feeling worse after the things that are supposed to help, my question is, hey, is that toilet clogged? Are those termini points clogged? Because if you have a clogged toilet and you try to flush more down, versus if the toilet's open and running well, it can handle a lot, right? Another very niche one, and either people land with this one or they don't. This is honest, again, it's one of my most popular TikToks. I think it's got like 1 million views or something like that, and it's a fairly long video. It wasn't a short little snippet that went viral. But itching during exercise and the heat during vibration plate usage, etc., is absolutely a sign that your lymphatic system needs some help. Especially with that, we're looking at histamine, histamine intolerance issues, and the fact that mast cells that release histamine exist within our connective tissue. So when we're exercising, when we're in the heat, when we're using those vibration plates, our mast cells are getting shaken up. And for folks with connective tissue issues, things like hypermobility, Ehlers-Danlos, anything that co-occurs often, autoimmune conditions, POTS, things like that, especially, it's worth looking at, hey, is this an excess of histamine versus any of the other explanations? People will say, oh, well, it's just your circulation or it's just your blood. What is being circulated and what is in your blood that is causing that itching? And especially when we look at how most folks will say, well, oh, if it's you itch when you exercise, just take an antihistamine. That's not what I'm recommending, by the way, to take an antihistamine. That's not the answer inherently. But especially when we look at the fact that the treatment usually recommended to folks, especially for exercise-induced urticaria and really exercise-induced itching, is often antihistamines. It's an interesting thing to think about. It's also fascinating because on the other side of that, there's antihistamines that can prevent it, but then also DAO and B6 are kind of cofactors to making sure that histamine can get broken down. So if you're struggling with that, not only looking at, hey, if you've been told to take antihistamines, maybe think about that, but looking at DAO and B6 as options as well too. Now, what are some conditions that are more likely to benefit from consistent lymphatic support than others? Right. Well, hey, do I have this? Could this benefit? Hey, do I have this? Could this benefit? Let's talk about certain things that are likely to benefit more than others. The first and foremost is always going to be edema, swelling. So that can include lymphedema and lipedema both. With lymphedema specifically, lymphedema can be managed much easier with lymphatic drainage than lipedema. So lymphatic drainage, compression bandaging, exercises, and skincare are all parts of something called complete decongestion therapy. And that tends to be a little bit more effective for lymphedema than lipedema because lipedema involves diseased fat cells. So while lymphatic support can help with the fluid, it can help with disease progression, it can absolutely improve quality of life. Improving lymphatic drainage can actually get rid of those diseased cells and that diseased tissue, and surgical removal of those is generally the best option once it gets to the point of lipedema. And now I am not fluent in the grades and the categories and in what it takes to qualify for surgical removal, usually via liposuction, but I have seen folks who've had it done who have had incredible improvement and their quality of life improved significantly once they were able to get that diseased tissue removed. Implant illnesses, especially breast implant illness, is another one that can absolutely benefit from lymphatic support once you've had your implants removed. The symptoms, and this is per the FDA, symptoms such as fatigue, memory loss, rashes, brain fog, joint pain can all be associated with breast implants, and they will call it breast implant illness. Especially getting those implants out and getting that taken care of and mitigated. Lymphatic drainage can be a great tool in that process. Same, or I guess similar, would be issues with Botox and fillers. Botox paralyzes the muscle, and because we rely on muscular contraction for the lymph to be able to flow well, Botox and fillers do impair lymphatic flow, which I think is entire crock of BS that you're doing this to look better, and it can actually make you puffier and make things worse. But if you do facial lymphatic drainage when you've had Botox or fillers, it will likely cause that to move out quicker. Whether or not you see that as a good thing, that's your business, not mine, but it will do it, right? Venous insufficiency. So venous insufficiency can include dull and achy and heavy feelings in the legs, swelling in the legs, tingling sensations, and even rashes and itching as time goes on. All can absolutely be improved with lymphatic drainage. Chronic health issues, including pain, inflammation, fatigue, things like that, all can benefit from consistent lymphatic support. Hormonal imbalances, including menstrual irregularities, thyroid issues, blood sugar issues. Blood sugar issues are hormone imbalances, right? God bless you. All of those things can benefit from consistent lymphatic support. And especially when we're talking about hormones, making sure that you're doing that deep abdominal breathing, that deep rhythmic diaphragmatic breath is so important because of how we synthesize our hormones, right? Making sure that we've got new good stuff coming in, but also can we take out the trash of what is our body is already used up, right? If you've got nervous system issues, and that can include dysregulation of your nervous system in all its many forms, as well as mental health issues, including subclinical issues like brain fog, trouble focusing, things like that, and then skin issues, which we've already gone into. Keeping on with the path here, digestive problems. If you can notice, there's a lot of different things that can benefit from lymphatic support, right? Digestive issues. If you are having frequent infections, autoimmune conditions, again, we're making sure we're taking out the trash so that we are having the least amount of pain, stiffness, those types of things as possible. Orthostatic issues, headaches and migraines, which we've already gone into a bit, as well as anything along the RCCX gene cluster theory. So hypermobile issues, POTS, mast cell, histamine issues, things like that. Especially when you get into the autism ADHD side of things. We know that mental health can be benefited by improving our glymphatic flow. Histamine issues and MCAS can be at least helped when we're improving our lymphatic flow and our ability to clear that histamine out. Orthostatic issues like in POTS, and then just kind of clearing house and making everything easier for folks with hypermobility and Ehlers-Danlos issues to deal with the pain, the inflammation, things like that, and everything that can come downwind with those sorts of issues, including venous insufficiency and a lot of the other things we've talked about. And as far as conditions that can benefit from consistent glymphatic support, mental health concerns, including those subclinical concerns, Alzheimer's, dementia, and other neurodegenerative disorders, as well as TBIs, including stroke, all can benefit from consistent lymphatic support. Flashback here to that moment when I talked about the spleen and how Chinese medicine looked at all of those issues. Now that we've gone through those, fatigue, digestive issues, immune system issues, fluid issues, bloating, all that is caused by a lack of physical activity sounds a whole lot like lymphatic system stagnation. It sounds a whole lot like how Chinese medicine would view the spleen deficiency. Right? Sometimes that Venn diagram turns into a circle, and there's definitely some ways that this isn't going to overlap at all. But if any of this sounds like, hey, this might be me, hey, this is, holy moly, this is ringing a little too close to home, it might be interesting to look at how Chinese medicine would look at a spleen qi deficiency. There's a lot of ways and suggestions for moving forward. They might be helpful for you, they might not, but you never know unless you investigate it, right? I'm always about more choices, more options, and more things on the table. And if that seems overwhelming to you, toss it out the window. But if it seems helpful, like I said, I'd really consider looking into this. Now, if we're going to talk about the benefits, and if we're going to talk about all the ways that lymphatic drainage can make things better, we also have to talk about the signs that to know and to look for to be able to tell if lymphatic drainage might not be for you. By and large, lymphatic practices are very effective. They're very gentle. They're very safe. They generally are very low risk, except for in a few specific circumstances. And we're going to talk about those here shortly. First and foremost, though, acute inflammation. If something is red and hot and inflamed, if there is an infection, we do not want that infection to spread. We do not want to send that out through your body. That is not a good thing. A widespread systemic infection. And nobody wants to go septic, right? So especially if there's just active acute inflammation, that is not the time to be doing lymphatic drainage practices. If you have any malignant tumors, so cancer, how cancer is graded is based off of how wide it's spread, and it spreads through your lymph nodes, right? If people say, oh, well, it's in your lymph nodes, that generally is a sign that things aren't very good. And we either want to keep it out of your lymph nodes, or we want to make sure that it doesn't spread any further than it already has. We've also got blood clots as a contraindication. We do not want to shake those loose. And if you know for sure you have active blood clots, lymphatic drainage is not the right fit for you. And then phlebitis is inflammation of a vein, especially with handling extra fluid, and especially when we're talking about inflammation, infection, things like that. Really, really not wanting to make things worse. And I just realized this says acute inflammation. I will change that before it gets uploaded. But I'm not re-recording this whole thing because that's already on that. More contraindications here. Kidney issues and heart issues go back to the same kind of core underlying principle. Can they handle the extra fluid that we're about to send that way if there's already issues going on with them? So if you have chronic kidney disease, if you have major heart issues, talking to your doctor to make sure that these organs can handle the extra fluid, absolutely a necessity. We don't want to make anything worse, especially with those two very, very critical organs, right? And if you've had lymph nodes removed, or if you've had lymph nodes that have been damaged, making sure to talk to your doctor to know which ones have been removed, how many are left is important to know. Because if we have about half of the nodes left in any chain, so with breast cancer, it's common to have lymph nodes removed in the underarms. If there's about half left, your body might be able to handle things well. But if you've had all of the nodes removed in a chain, that would be a sign to get help from a manual lymphatic drainage professional to learn how to reroute the fluid in a way that works best for your body. Your body will adapt, your body will heal. You just need a little bit of a specialized attention because things are working a little bit different than the average person. Not better, not worse, just different. And we're thinking about going slowly. One of those signs that you need to maybe go a little bit slower would be any sort of previous surgery. So large incisions will always impact lymphatic flow. Our lymphatic vessels, that whole map of all those green little tubes throughout our body, right? They're right underneath the surface. So if you've had any incisions, lymphatic flow will be impacted. Horizontal ones actually do impact it more than vertical ones. Appendectomies, C-sections, things like that. I'm currently navigating how to figure out post C-section, rerouting that for myself. I'll let you know how that goes once I figure it out. But if you're the type of person that has had a large surgery, especially large horizontal incisions, and things just don't feel like they're flowing well, again, talking to a manual lymphatic drainage professional to figure out how to best reroute that fluid for your body is always going to be the best bet. Personalized attention when you need it. Sometimes you don't, but when you do, super helpful and really can take it to the next level. You stayed with me this long. What can we do to help, Savanna? And again, since your lymphatic system doesn't have a pump, we've got to either have muscles, internal pressure differences, compression, or gravity. So one of the ways that we could use external compressive forces would be things like compression socks. Even water can do that. So swimming is a really great way to combine muscle activity with compressive forces because you get the muscle activity of the swimming plus the compression of the water. Plus, I love swimming. Swimming's not your thing though. You don't have to, no worries. As far as recruiting nearby muscles, exercise is a great way to do it. That can be intense. That can be something like walking. Vibration plates, though, are fantastic. It's stimulating those tiny little muscle contractions and stimulating your lymph flow. Really, really superb. Really great tools. But we do one thing very specifically that is constantly changing our internal pressure in our body. We are always, always, always breathing. And rhythmic diaphragmatic breath, like we talked about earlier with the abdominal tissue, is one of the key components that gets debauched when we are in stress, trauma, anxiety, physiology. It is one of the easiest tools back in to work with our nervous system, but it is also one of the most important pieces to making sure that our deep abdominal lymphatic tissue is flowing well and working well. Rhythmic diaphragmatic breath, easy practice, simple practice. It's not fancy, it's not crazy, but it's consistent and it works every single time. Some folks who are in really strong stress physiology will struggle with it. Doesn't mean that it's never going to be your thing. It just means that you might need a little bit more support. And I've got another video that I will drop the link to down below on rhythmic diaphragmatic breath. But as a whole, smooth. You're not even. So pick a number, make them both match. If anything, maybe stretch those exhales out. But we really want to maybe be in for 4, out for 4, in for 3, out for 3, something like that. We're not, hey guys, oh yeah, right? It's a very controlled, quiet breath, and there are no pauses. Happy to talk about box breath and why it is the bane of my clinical existence, but it's a different video for a different day. Using gravity to our advantage, though. Now, if you combine these two, if you combine rhythmic diaphragmatic breath and legs up the wall, power packed, my friends. We're essentially reversing gravity. So our legs and our feet, I know a lot of folks who have more trouble in their legs and their feet than other areas. Lymphedema, lipedema typically happen in the legs. It's because gravity is doing its best, man. But gravity is hard, and especially if those little valves inside of your veins aren't big enough, venous insufficiency, right? Sometimes there's backflow. So if your legs are a problem area, if you have more issues with your legs, you can put them all the way up the wall. I put them up the bookshelf a lot. You can literally just elevate them to some extent, putting a pillow under your legs, leg of the couch, or excuse me, the arm of the couch, anything to get your legs above your heart. Use gravity to your advantage, my friends. It is free. Rhythmic diaphragmatic breath is free. Legs up the wall is free. Use the things that are free to your advantage. And if you'd like to learn more, we have several options. So we have the Beginner's Guide to Lymphatic Health ebook, pretty descriptive, and that is literally the Beginner's Guide to Lymphatic Health. If you've made it this far in, though, you probably made it a little bit past needing that Beginner's Guide. But something that you might be interested in is the Complete Guide to Vibration Plates. You guys, I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. Everybody and their mothers wants to sell me a vibration plate, but nobody wants to teach me how to use it. And I had no idea I could do anything beyond just step on it. Right? There's so many ways that we can modify our vibration plate for lymphatic health, for glymphatic health with special populations, folks with edema, lipedema, lymphedema, folks with the hypermobility, histamine, POT sorts of things, as well as ways that you can use it while you're pregnant, right? If that's something that you want to consider, I would always encourage you to talk to your OB, talk to your midwife to see if it is the right fit for you. I did lay down, when I was pregnant, I laid down all the way on the ground and just put my feet, kind of elevated my feet and put my feet on the vibration plate. Spoiler alert, that's that's the thing you would need to talk about. But if you want to see a visual and some things to consider with that, that would be the Complete Guide to Vibration Plates, would be the ebook for you. We've also got 2 different courses. We've got the Lymphatic Essentials mini course, which teaches you 6 essential lymphatic principles and 10 essential lymphatic practices. There's a 30-page companion workbook. There's a 1-hour mindful movement class. And what's really important in the lymphatic essentials is we're teaching beyond just the big 6. You know, I hear that all the time. Well, I do the big 6. I do the big 6. The big 6 doesn't really take into account that deep rhythmic diaphragmatic breath, to my understanding at least. And it doesn't take into account the effects of gravity. So really having a multifaceted practice beyond just the big 6 and understanding more than just that can be really helpful for a lot of folks. I do teach a figurine of that in the Essentials mini course. But you know, if you're one of the people that feels like the big 6 is getting you where you're going, do your best, live your best life, do your thing, my friend. No worries. And then our full course is a lymphatic blueprint, and that is a full immersion into lymphatic drainage and how to perform manual lymphatic drainage on yourself and on any part of your body. We break the body up into different areas. And by the end of this course, you will be able to identify problem areas in your body and know exactly how to practice to help. Literally, where are your problem areas? What can you do about it? You will have lots of tools in your toolbox. We have over 9 different practices, over 100 pages of support material. There's a companion workbook, a practice guide, plus all of the information in the Essentials course and access to that same mindful movement class. And all of that was custom designed by me. I designed the workbooks, I drew out the graphics, designed the course material, all of that stuff. So really made with love and made with somebody who practices it and really, really loves to educate folks about it as well too. And thanks so much for watching and hanging out with me thus far. If this was up your alley, make sure you subscribe. We talk about a lot of different things in a lot of different ways, especially with how they all play together. And really, you guys, I like to geek out about the things I love to geek out about. And it's fun to have friends who want to geek out to it with me. And if you learned something along the way, let me know in the comments. And if you have any questions, be sure to let me know in the comments as well too. We'll chat soon. Take good care.